Let's get cracking. I've given it 5 minutes. People can join in later. Welcome everyone to the very first iteration. You're part of the trial of the time-lapse workshop sponsored by Enlaps. As I mentioned earlier, normally I do an entire masterclass about the Enlaps system. I thought I'd change it up, keep it exciting because I've done it so many times. I thought, how about we do an introduction to time-lapse photography, and part of it is sponsored by Enlaps. So there's a chapter today specifically about the Enlaps cameras, but 95% of what you're seeing in the next hour or in the next 55 minutes, and we're trialing the time here as well, is going to be just time lapse and a bit of waffling and a little bit about me. So yeah, I guess let's begin with you can screenshot that because there's two discounts here, two good discounts. One is Metros Dash Enlaps. You get a €50 discount on a purchase from the, I can change my, that's better. €50 discount for the Enlaps store. So if you're thinking of buying an Enlaps or a Tiki camera, you get discount. And then of course my wonderful ultimate time-lapse course, you get a $50 discount for that as well with code Let's Go 50. So take a photo of this with your phone or screenshot it or write it down, whatever. I've got it at the end of the class as well. Just so you know why I'm like looking, I have the smallest reference screen for where I actually am in this presentation. Let's get going. What are we learning today? A little bit about me. Introduction about me. We're doing some planning, how to start with time-lapse photography. Obviously, you need to know the basics of planning preparations as well. We'll also be doing some shooting, obviously, and we're not on location, but I'm going to demo how to shoot with some good written things. We're also editing. I'm not showing you how to time slice. I've got tutorials about that, but we'll go over the basics of editing, so that's going to be pretty fun. And then it's Enlaps time. We're going to be talking about the new Enlaps cameras. But first, a little bit about me. My name is Matthew van de Putte, as we would say in Belgium. I am from Antwerp. I moved to Australia when I was 23. That was 11 years ago. I moved to London when I was 20 something. I've been in London for 5 years. People know me online as Matt Joes, not Matt Joes. My name is not Matt Joes. It's a nickname. People think it's my real name. I get contacted a lot. People saying, hey, Matt, Joe's, blah, blah. Nope, it's just a nickname. Don't worry about it too much. Just that. That's a photo of me in Australia shooting the Southern Hemisphere, some astrophotography at night, obviously. A little more waffle. In case you've fallen onto this workshop without knowing who I am, a bit of context. Also, so I can show you that I know what I'm talking about. I've been doing this for a very long time. I have been a time-lapse and specifically a hyperlapse photographer or an operator, camera operator, for, let's think, 12 years now, full-time freelance, specifically time-lapse photography, more specifically within that niche, hyperlapse photography, which, in case if you don't know what that is, it's like a big moving time-lapse. Through sharing my work online, I have gathered a bit of a following, just showing the behind the scenes and the end results. I think it was mostly a right place, right time thing for me, why I have that following, which is, I don't know, 120K-ish on Insta and then YouTube, etc. I'm not as passionate about that anymore, just tired of it because I've been doing it for so long and algorithms keep messing it up. But I guess part of my job is also being a social media content creator. I despise the term content creator, but it is what it is. Recently, earlier this year or end of last year, I founded MVDP Studios, which is the business branch of me, dynamic visual storytelling for brands and events. And we just create really cool stuff for Formula One, the NFL, the Goodwood event. I'm blessed to work with cool teams and crews and work with freelancers myself to enable captivating high quality visuals for brands and events like you can see on screen. So yeah, that often goes viral, which is good. 7.9 million views on that one. Pretty good stuff. So that's the other branch of what I do. Then I do the odd workshop. I don't do them as much anymore. I used to do way more in Australia, but this counts as a workshop. I do 2 a month, and this is the latest one. So you're the first to attend this iteration. Ooh, that's going to be very distracting. That I'm going to minimize you, and I'm going to keep that there. Bit of workshops, and then I sell an ebook and then a course called the Ultimate Time-Lapse course. And again, coupon Let's Go 50 gets you 50 buckaroos off. You get 85. No, that's an old graphic. I think you get 95 lessons Over 6 hours, you get presets, you get the ebook, you get lots, you get the whole shebang. You get all of me teaching all of you how to do everything I know about time-lapse photography, hyperlapse photography, astrophotography. So quite a lot. But enough about me. Let's talk time-lapse shooting methods, shall we? Let me know in the chat who's shot a time-lapse before. Or let me know your confidence level, I guess, with time-lapse photography. Are you a beginner, and is that why you're here at the basic time-lapse photography workshop? Are you a pro, and are you just looking to learn a little bit more about how I do it? Are you just someone interested in it? Do you just like me and my waffling on about things? Let me know so I can kind of gauge what my audience is doing. Couple of ways to shoot a time-lapse. I've shot a couple of time lapses for a client, and it was my first one. It turned out okay. Perfect. Love to hear it. Turned out okay. Actually, no, don't love to hear it. I want it to turn out fantastic. And hopefully, through some teaching and learnings, we can make that happen. The most simple way of shooting a time lapse is recording video and speeding it up. Now, that's what most people think it is what I do. When they see my work, they're like, wow, so you speed up video, huh? I'm like, well, I can sense the sarcasm in your voice. F off, that's not what it is. The reason you don't shoot video and you speed it up is there are many reasons. Firstly, you drain your battery like crazy. You're recording too much data that you're not going to be showing off because you're going to speed it up anyway. You don't have the dynamic range available of raw files. You are blasting through your storage space, etc., etc. So shooting video and speeding it up is an option. It's definitely not ideal. Are we still clear in the, yeah, cool. The second way is to shoot stills, photographs, raw photographs, and then you create a video from those stills. There are also some cameras like Canon, for example, where there is no post-processing involved, and the camera itself records single video frames but spread out over time. So it renders a video in camera, but it doesn't store the raw files. Lumix cameras do both. They shoot JPEGs and RAWs, and they create a video in camera, which is why I'm now shooting on the Lumix system because it's so great. Holy Grail shooting, we call Holy Grail time lapses, sunset or sunrise time lapses, because the light changes and you have to adjust your settings as you go along. That has gotten a lot easier over the last couple of years. Trust me. I don't think it should be called the Holy Grail anymore, but it's kind of stuck. You need extra gear time and post-processing and software to make that all happen. But obviously, we're going to be talking about the thing in bold, shooting stills and creating video from those stills. That is the ideal method for reasons that I briefly spoke about earlier. You have all the resolution of the sensor. You have raw files, so dynamic range and adjustable white balance after the fact. Much better for long exposures in low light, shooting astrophotography. Better for your battery life, better for your storage, you name it. The reasons are multitudes. There's multitudes of reasons why you would do it this way specifically. So that's obviously the method that I'm going to be talking about. How says, I already shot a few. Thomas says, beginner, I want to do a series of time lapses at Burning Man this year. Nice. After 19 years, since 2004, of becoming a somewhat well-known Burning Man photographer. So need to learn from you. Thomas, that is sick. I would love to see what you make there. I can imagine it's not the easiest environment to shoot in. And I know one of the shooters who's done some Burning Man time lapses, and they're just out of this world great. So I can't wait to see that. Chris says, these days I'm shooting a lot of time lapses using GoPro and DJI Pocket Osmo 3, letting them do the thinking. Yep, technology has caught on. We now have, I just bought this thing recently, the Insta360 Flow Pro, which enables me to shoot motion control time lapses on my iPhone straight out the box. So yeah, you're here for the motivation to get more creative and be in control stuff. A couple for a project, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. So everyone's into time lapse. That's good. Good stuff. How to shoot a time lapse, hey? Let's go over the basics. What gear do you need? If you have a client, yeah, you're going to enjoy the Enlaps chapter and maybe the other session as well that I do specifically about the Enlaps cameras. I mentioned shooting time lapses on my iPhone. I was on Android for 8 years. You can shoot time lapse. Any recent smartphone of the last couple of years has a time lapse mode built in. The majority of modern day cameras have a time lapse mode built in. Samsung, for some reason, calls time lapse mode hyperlapse, which I found strange as a hyperlapse photographer myself, someone who's been around since the dawn of hyperlapse photography in the modern day. That's a little bit frustrating to see them call it that. It's not the case. What I'm trying to say here is you don't need special equipment anymore to shoot a time lapse or to capture a time lapse and to share it with an audience. At the very basic level, you need a couple of things. You obviously need a camera, but your phone can be that as well. You need a lens that your phone has built in as well. You need an intervalometer, which is either a hardware or a software device, internal or external of your system, that triggers a photo on a consistent interval, hence intervalometer. You want to be able to set your interval to a certain setting, and we'll talk about which setting to use later. That's called the intervalometer. So that can be in the menu system of your camera, or that can be an external controller. You obviously need a battery charge and a memory card to store your images on. You need a tripod or a mount or a clamp, something to keep your camera steady, because this is one of the common mistakes, the rookie errors. And I moderate the time-lapse subreddit, and this is all you see when people post is shaky time-lapses that just move. And I'm like, it's not that hard. Even if you lean your camera against a bottle on a beach, make it steadier, make it more steady. So get yourself a decent tripod or a decent clamp to keep it steady. And then, of course, you need a subject to shoot. Now, pretty much the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they're built in your phone, as I mentioned. So don't feel like you have to go buy stuff to shoot cool time lapses. I've shot stuff on my phone that's gone viral, more viral than my other stuff. And that was captured on either a GoPro or an iPhone or a Samsung or whatever. But the majority of what you're looking for, or maybe the most important thing, is your subject matter. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit as well. For now, because I do get very distracted, a little bit ADHD vibes, questions, let's keep them for the end of the session, because otherwise I just lose my flow. But normally I do it in the meantime, but now we have too many people in the session, which is great, of course. By the way, we have 12 participants. That's the most we've had in a while. We're going to talk about how to prepare a shoot. So how to prepare a shoot. It's always nice to set out with a vision or a goal in mind. And with that, I mean, what's the angle? Is it just to learn things? Then go out and learn things. But do you want a little bit more? Then try and work maybe with a shot list or a storyline of what you're going to be crafting. Are you heading out into a city or in your local town or in your village or wherever you live? Try and get a diverse number of shots, find contrast in what you are shooting. So shoot some wide angles, shoot some medium shots, and shoot some tight shots as well if you have that. Again, your phone can now shoot on all those lenses. So make sure that this will help you in post-production when you're crafting and edit. Get a diverse range of shots, wide, mediums, tights, couple of shots shooting up, couple of shots from very low shooting up, maybe shooting down from a bridge, you name it. But set out with that vision and that shot list. You have a goal, have a bit of a storyline maybe in mind before you head out. What can help with that is researching your location. Now, I use photo pills a lot to figure out where the sun's going to be, and I use Google Maps a lot. Every commercial job I've done this year, which has been quite a few, I have gone virtual location scouting as well as real life location scouting, obviously. But virtual location scouting using Google Maps and Street View and figuring out what the angles look like and where are lighting poles or telephone poles or bus stops that can get in the way. What's the traffic going to be like? I can do all that from the comfort of my home. I will take notes and prepare my location scout from the comfort of my home, which is lovely. This will pay off in the end. Do a little bit of research. Before you head out, you want to make sure that your batteries are charged. I think we've all done that. Head out with a flat bat, and then you're like, oh, that's a really big shame. Format your memory card, or make sure that you are comfortable formatting your memory card when you're on site. I have on my desk here, I can't show you, but I've got a pile of memory cards that are good to go. There we go. And they're numbered as well. If they are on the right side of my desk, they're to be shot on. If they're on the left, they are to be offloaded and to be edited. There's never a card on the left because I immediately dump them and back them up, and then they go into the right pile on my desk. And clean your lens, clean your sensor, make sure your stuff's clean, especially before a job. If you're at that level when you're doing jobs, paid time-lapse work, you want to make sure that stuff's clean. There's nothing worse than coming home and having 3,000 images on your memory card and then realizing that there's a dust spot or something on your sensor, and you're gonna have to clean that up in post, which adds a lot of time. I've got a sneeze coming and it's bad. Oh, God. Come on, let's get this over with. No, it's here. As I said, my allergies are really bad today. I've lost my train of thought. Next one, pack your bag and head out. Packing your bag, it's one of my favorite things because I'm always trying to tweak. I can't show you my bag. It's too full over there. I'm always trying to tweak the balance of where things are to the point, like I know if I put my bag down and I open it with, say, my right hand, I want to be able to quickly grab a battery or with my left. And then I figure out, I spent 2 hours a couple days ago figuring out the optimal way to put my gimbal. Yeah, you can't see it because I'm cut out. To put my gimbal in there so that I can easily and efficiently run and gun in the city. And just blow my nose for a second. Yeah, it took 2 hours to figure out how to load my bag the most efficient way. Excuse me. Ah, yeah, it's summer in London. It's also pollen season. We'll cut this out of the recording, maybe. Excuse me. So pack your bag and head out and go and shoot some stuff. Now, what to do when you are at your location? Basic shoot theory, capture theory. You've got your spot that you've location scouted before virtually using the app that I mentioned or the service that I mentioned. When you're there and you've got what you, or when you arrive, don't ever just set up your camera and start shooting. What you want to do is you want to do a little walk around, because very highly likely there is a better angle than where you are right now. If you're at a car park and you arrive and like, wow, sick view, almost guaranteed there's going to be a better view. So walk around a little bit. And then once you find a spot that is better, or if you've come initially to that first spot that is the best spot, have a think about what's going to happen in the next hour or 2 hours. There is a spot in Sydney across from the city, across from the Opera House, car park. You get out, you're like, this is sick. But then the sun sets, and then all the tourist buses park in that car park as well. And they get out and they love getting close to your tripod, and they will bump into your camera because they're trying to copy the shot of the pro photographer that's there as well. So you will have people potentially coming in. What if the wind picks up? If you're by the beach or by the water, is the water going to rise? Are the waves going to splash against the wall and going to hit your camera? All these things have happened to me, by the way. This is, from experience. Is the wind going to pick up? Is the light going to be too bright if it's coming behind the building, or if it's going to reflect off something? Are you on a boardwalk, or are you mounted on a railing on the side that people use when the people arrive and they're going to walk on that boardwalk or the railing? It's going to shake, and it's going to shake your shot. Your shot's ruined. So once you've found the best spot in the location, think forward, think ahead, and think about what's going to happen that potentially will ruin your shot. Make sure your setup is sturdy. I've talked about this. Get it right in camera. Make sure your bag is accessible. I see a lot of people, a lot of landscape photographers, they have these little hooks on their tripod and they love hanging their bag on it. And then you can't access your bag because the last thing you want to do is move your camera setup once you've started shooting, right? So don't hang your bag on your tripod, because to get access to something in the bag, be it a memory card or a wiping cloth or an extra battery, you're going to move your shot. And that's not what you want to do. So make sure your bag is accessible. Frame up your shot, and if you have a zoom lens, zoom out a little bit just in case you're going to need to stabilize in post-production. That zoom out will make sure you have enough framing to stabilize into. Shoot raw photographs. I'll just explain it anyways, because it's the basics of time lapse. It's for beginners. Raw photographs are the higher end of capturing versus a JPEG. So most cameras, they shoot JPEGs. And some cameras, or most pro cameras, obviously have an option to shoot raw photographs. A raw photograph is just a collection of data that comes off the sensor. It's a readout of the imaging sensor behind your lens. The light hits it. There's all these values per pixel that is stored as a raw file, a CR2 file, or an RW2 file, or a CR3 file, or a whatever else Sony and Nikon use. It is a larger file size, but it allows you to change your exposure and your white balance and your denoising, etc., in post-production much, much more than a JPEG. So you get so much more latitude in post-production with raw files. I probably shouldn't have explained. I assume you're on that level, but shooting raw files is just extremely, extremely valuable to, for example, deflicker shots, which we'll talk about in a bit. I spoke about the intervalometer. By the way, I know I'm going at a pace here, but as I said, this is the first time doing this specific workshop, so I'm trying to figure out my pacing here. Basic shoot theory, intervals. This is a guideline, okay? So 1, 3, 6 for people, clouds, or sunset. If you're shooting people walking, people on bikes, people in cars, if the subject matter is people, I think that looks best with a 1 second interval. Not all cameras and not all memory cards allow you to shoot 1 second intervals. So test that beforehand if it's a crucial shot that you're going to be doing. Are you shooting clouds, a cityscape with clouds moving past, or a landscape with clouds above? You're looking at an average of 3 second interval. That's going to be the nicest. I am very well experienced when it comes to the sky and capturing clouds. Generally, I shoot those at a 3 second interval. Anything longer, a sunset or a sunrise or more, where I'm going to be shooting from 45 minutes to an hour and a half to 2 hours or 3 hours, 6 second interval to 10 seconds, but on average, 6 second interval is my go-to. That gives you enough frames to create a nice video. Speaking of frames or photos, try and shoot a minimum of 200. This results in 8 seconds of video, and I'll explain that very briefly. When you're done with a sequence, when you've done your 200 photos, what I often do is I grab the camera and I hold my hand in front and I click a few raw frames so that the frames are black because there's no exposure. Or I make a folder in camera so that when I load all these things in Lightroom to organize them later, I can immediately tell where a sequence stops and starts. That's not always super visible. And then one of the key crucial tips, once your shot is running, once you hit start on your intervalometer on your remote, let it run. Don't interrupt it because you think the angle there is going to be slightly better, or, oh, maybe you should have done this. Once it's running, let it run. You're most likely going to end up with 2 poorly executed shots versus 1 decent shot. This is just from experience. I spoke about these 200 photo minimums in a PAL country, which is the UK, all of Europe, all of the world except for the US. Video files play, the television and the internet and whatever. Video files play at a frame rate of 25 frames per second, 25 photos per second playback. So if you shoot 100 photos, 100 frames divided by 25, that's 4 seconds of footage. 200 frames is 8 seconds of footage. An 8-second time-lapse clip is a nice amount to get going, to show in an edit. The end result is to have enough time-lapse footage to put in an edit, right? Either for yourself or for your client. A lot of remotes, internal and external ones, ask you to set the number of frames. Just don't do that, because if it's a nice sunset or there's a cool cloud happening and you hit that 200 frames and you don't realize the shot has stopped running, but you wish it was still running, just set it to infinity and use an alarm on your phone to notify you that your shots, you can hit stop on the remote, because that's just going to happen. You're going to have shots cut short when you do it like that. You can screenshot this or take a photo of it. This is just an impression. On the left, you have the number of photos that you take. Say I take 500 photos. That's going to be a 20-second video at 25 frames per second. And say I'm shooting clouds at a 3-second interval, 500 photos. That is 1,500 seconds divided by 60 seconds is a 25-minute long shot. So this graph or this matrix or whatever you want to call it, the spreadsheet shows you how long your clip's going to be at 25 or 30 FPS and how long your recording time is going to be at certain intervals. So this is something that features in my ebook and in my course and stuff as well. Then we've talked about intervals and everything. Now, what is your shutter speed? Well, firstly, yeah, I probably missed that. I should say you shoot everything on manual. I think that's going to come after this. Your shutter speed up until 3 seconds interval, you want to half your interval, divide your interval by 2, and that's your desired shutter speed. It's not massively important, but if you're shooting moving subjects like people or cars or traffic, whatever, it is important because it adds a nice motion blur when you play it back at the desired frame rate. So as I mentioned, people I shoot at a 1 second interval, right? So 1 frame, 1 photo per second. The ideal shutter speed for that is half a second. So your interval divided by 2 is your shutter speed for the most cinematic look. If you have a 2-second interval divided by 2, that's going to be a 1-second exposure. In the daytime, you can't see it because I've got this cut out now. ND filters are your friend. I often bring a 5-stop and a 10-stop ND filter with me for shoots where I'm in the shade in a city. I'll use the 5-stop filter. If I'm in the full sunshine, the 10-stop filter, so that I can actually expose for half a second to 1 second, because that's a lot of light hitting the sensor in the middle of the day. Oh, here it is. I should put this earlier on in the workshop. This is why we're doing the trial live. It's good to know. Shoot everything on manual. So manual ISO, manual white balance, manual shutter speed, manual aperture, and manual ISO. That's the one. The 5 settings that you can decide on while you're shooting in camera, set them all locked into manual because your camera doesn't necessarily know what it's doing. You know you're shooting a time lapse, but your camera is going to try and adjust the exposure or the white balance over this 200 photo sequence. You want to lock that in. So everything on manual. Don't let the camera decide. And very important to save battery and to keep your shot steady, image review. So you take a photo and then it comes up on the back of the camera. I haven't used that in 12 years because all it does is drain the battery and slow the camera down for the next shot that it's going to take. So turn off your image review. It is one of the early menu settings in most cameras. And you also want to turn off your sensor and lens stabilization if you have it. Why is that? Some camera systems, when that is on and they're on a tripod or on a clamp, which is what you want to do when you're doing a time lapse, they will look for motion to stabilize because that's how they work. They have a spinning ring in that, kind of like a gyro system. When you're moving out and about and you're shooting handheld, that's very, very helpful. But when it's on a tripod or a clamp, that's the opposite of what you want. You will get a little hunting motion in your shot. So turn that off as well. Advanced shoot theory, not today, because this is the basics of time-lapse photography, but I'll quickly go through what it is. Sunrise or sunset means changing your exposure. This is an S-curve. This shows you what the changing in light looks like. You need to adjust your settings as you go along. You need to extend your exposure. You can go with the manual method and then use LR time-lapse to fix that, or aperture priority method, or a smart aperture priority method, which is what I mostly use. Or you can use an external device like a bulb ramper. I would explain the manual method, but not in this workshop because we don't have the time, because it's half an hour in. We're making good pace. I think we're gonna nail it. I can probably take it a little bit easier next time, which is good to know. Common mistakes: not drinking enough water while you're doing a presentation. Let's quickly read the chat. Okay, if you just have one camera set up for a construction, you want to set up more cameras. And that's how you can make an edit less boring. Or the subject matter has to be more interesting. So the build site has to have more exciting things happening. This can be a framing thing, or you can add other elements in there while you're shooting for that client. But we'll talk about more of that in the later bit of this workshop. Common mistakes in time-lapse photography. Not shooting raw. I told you shoot raw because it helps you with everything, transitioning from day into night. You can change your white balance gradually. You can denoise much better. You can lift your shadows and drop your highlights much better. Change your exposures by multiple stops. It's just, yeah, you shouldn't really even be shooting JPEGs. Just shoot raw. Another common mistake, not checking or formatting your SD card before shooting. What if I only have one card with me and there was a commercial shoot and I'm on location and I need to shoot, but the card's almost full and I don't know if this card has been formatted or if it's been backed up properly? Do you take the risk on site to format that? No. You have to do this beforehand. Check and format your cards the day before you go shooting or the morning of your shoot. Just have a system in place to get that sorted. There's nothing like that stress on like, oh, can I format this card? Or is that going to really ruin me? Who knows? Another common mistake is not shooting everything on manual. When you leave certain settings to auto, so auto ISO or auto white balance, you will get flickering in your shot, and that is one of the many, many mistakes you see beginners make, and it's a very distracting thing. There's two distractions in beginner time lapses. It's flickering in the exposure and it's movement on the tripod because of the stabilization that I mentioned earlier. Not locking your aperture on a Canon system is also a common mistake. I'm not up to speed with the new RF system if you can lock the exposure like back in the day, but there is something called aperture flickering. You know, when you take a photo and you set your aperture to f11, for example, in the lens, that aperture closes for each photo you take. And you think that closes to the exact same level, right? Wrong. That closes slightly differently every single time. If you take a photo, a street photo at f11, of a wall and then of a person and then of a car, you're not going to notice that exposure difference. However, if you're shooting 200 of the exact same photos with 2 seconds apart of a sky, if that is like in this very small difference in the mechanical closing of that aperture, you will see that in the exposure because you're playing those frames back at 25 frames per second, and that will show up. So that is what we call aperture flickering. There's obviously software to fix that, like LR Timelapse or deflickering plugins, or you can do it in DaVinci Resolve or other apps. But that is preventable. You can prevent that from happening in Canon systems by locking your aperture. And I've got a video about that on my YouTube channel that you can check out. I can't demo it now because I don't have any Canon equipment. You run the RF system and we'll have to check if it does. Yeah. Mechanical or electronic shutter. I always prefer mechanical shutter because electronic shutter can introduce some weird compressions of the readout. It's almost like rolling shutter, but different. And I see this with exposures faster than a 1/100th of a second. That's for advanced shoot theory, and I think I cover that in my time-lapse course. But yeah, generally, I am a big proponent of mechanical shutter specifically for that reason. How to edit a time lapse. We're getting there. We're getting there. Some demo stuff. Which software to use depends on your level. We're here talking about the beginner stuff, right? So that is not beginner stuff. Adobe Lightroom Classic and After Effects, that's top tier stuff. That's what I use. That is, it gives me all the flexibility. I use different plugins, etc. This is like the power suite. Adobe Photoshop, you can use Adobe Photoshop to render videos if you're on the photography plan where you have Lightroom and Photoshop. It's like 10 or 20 bucks a month. You can render videos out of Photoshop, so then you don't need After Effects. Lightroom and LR Timelapse, my favorite LR Timelapse. By the way, LR Timelapse 7 exists now. Here we go. This is LR Timelapse 7, launched last week or 2 weeks ago. This is a preview of a shot that I picked up this morning. It's mounted. Can you see the building? No, you can't see the building because I'm cut out. But yeah, LR Timelapse is a software made for time-lapse photographers by a time-lapse photographer. I've been using it since 2012, I think. So a very long time. I'm very familiar with it. It is very, very powerful to edit time-lapses. Probably overkill for beginner time-lapse workshop. But yeah, know that I use that one as well. And then there are other compiling apps. TLDF, it's called Timelapse Deflicker. I thought I had it open, but I don't have it open. Something similar is Glue Motion. Glue Motion is, I think, both Mac and PC. So there's a free version and a paid version. You load in your sequence here, and then you can get a quick preview. You can crop, you can adjust stuff, you can change your white balance. Blending, it does deflickering as well. You can change your speed, so you can choose your playback frame rate, and then you create an export. So say I want to slow this down to 12 frames. I can generate a preview real quick because I don't have enough frames. It's going to be a little bit jittery, but generally anything upwards from, say, 15 frames a second looks smooth enough. But yeah, look at that. Very cool time-lapse sequence. And then export, render in any kind of codec you want. This is Glue Motion. This is the paid version. The free version allows you to do up to a certain resolution, etc. I use this all the time to quickly render JPEG sequences as opposed to going into After Effects and opening all that up. This is like a drag and drop, plug and play. Same with TLDF, except this one's like a little bit more updated and a little bit more smooth to use. So Glue Motion, very handy little app to have. But I would recommend checking out DaVinci Resolve Studio if you have it. The free version of DaVinci Resolve allows you to render time lapses. Rendering means transforming the photos into a video file, and you can add color grading and a lot of stuff in DaVinci Resolve. So I wrote out how to do all that, which is this. Screenshot this if you want, or follow along. I'm going to do it live. Open the software, go to the media window, drag your sequence into the media pool, create a timeline using selected clips, adjust your settings to photo size, edit as needed, go to the deliver tab and edit, export your master file. Let's do that, right? We're here in the media pool. There's no clips in the media pool. I'm navigating to where I have a JPEG sequence. You see that? one photo, second photo, third photo. These are sequentially named. So 0001, 0002, all the way to the end. If they're in a sequence, sequentially named like that in a folder, look at what you can do. Drag that in there. Oh no, I've messed it up. I always do this, and I get this comment a lot. What you want to do is I was in the wrong tab. Go into the media tab. So bottom left, I'm not sure if that's showing on the screen. In this tab here, that's where you want to drag that into the bottom half of the screen. Sorry, I've got two monitors, so I'm pointing at the entirely wrong thing. You want to drag that in this bit of the import media window, so that that sequence of photos is immediately recognized as a video file because it's seen the sequential naming of that. So this selection of photos is a video file. What do you do then? You right click that. This is probably hard for you guys to see. And you create a new timeline using the selected clip. And you don't use the project settings, but you go into the format and go custom and set that to the size of your photo. So this photo sequence is 6,000 pixels wide by 4,000 pixels high, hence the 6,000 by 4,000 image sequence. If I wouldn't have done that, if I go project settings, it's going to create a timeline that is 4K size, but then I have to adjust the size and I'm going to lose resolution. So do what I'm doing here, create that. That's going to create that. Double click that timeline and look at that. You now have your time-lapse clip. And this is a pretty cool clip. I mean, look at that roll cloud. What can I do then? I can go and add some dramatic effects, like make, I don't know, whatever, you know, I'm not going to go into depth there, but you can edit like that, and then you go to the deliver tab here. And what I would recommend is you just go either H.265 master or ProRes 422 master and adjust your settings. Add to the render queue, select the destination, roll cloud, roll cloud, add it to the render queue, hit render all, and that's going to render a time-lapse clip. Whoops, reveal, wrong button, quit that. Oh my God, don't save, doesn't matter. This is now the clip I just rendered. Voila. That's how easy it is. You can do this in batch for all of your sequences, and then you import them into your editing software and create a captivating edit where you can zoom in on the shot, you can add further color grading, you can add transitions, you can add effects, etc. So this is the paid version of DaVinci Resolve Studio, but this works the exact same for the free version, but it is then limited to 4K resolution, I think. Now for the sponsor bit, and we have 15 minutes left, so I feel like I'm absolutely nailing this timing here. No new chats. That's good. That's going well. I'm sweating like crazy, by the way. The Enlaps Tiki ecosystem, or as the Frenchies call it, Taiki. I think it's Tiki, but they've made the system, so they're probably right. But it's just natural for me to say Tiki ecosystem. It's an ecosystem, yeah? What does that mean? It's got three things. Firstly, they've got cameras, and they've got two cameras now. One is the Tiki Mini that is in this box. That is, I will unbox this live for you. This is their latest system that launched a couple of weeks ago. I don't know. That's it. Boom. One lens, one camera, an enormous battery in here. Oh, that's still on. This thing, I accidentally ripped that off this morning. I have to plug that back in here, but it has a micro SD storage up to 1 terabyte, a USB-C charging port, and a micro SIM card port as well. A power button, a shutter button, 2 LEDs, a humidity port, and a brightness sensor at the front. I'll show you what to use this for in a second, but I very much enjoyed this thing because I shot, how long did I shoot? You can shoot up to a month or 3 months on a single charge. I don't know. Talk about that in a bit. So that's the Tiki Mini. And then in a similar box, you have the Tiki 3 Pro Plus. And that looks like this. And this is specifically for outdoor usage. Why? I mean, they're both weather sealed, but this one has a solar panel on it that you can open up and angle to the sun, and 2 cameras, right? 2 cameras, panoramic cameras. It stitches the photos online. And I did that this morning for an amazing shot in one of the tallest towers in London. Where is it? It is in the renders. It is this shot here. So this is straight out of camera, plug and play. I set this up, I hit record. It took a photo every minute for 2 or 3 days until I had to go get the cameras back. And this is what that looks like. I haven't deflickered this or anything. This is literally straight out of camera. You can see rain coming in. It's a really cool shot. And if you see on the left here, you can see the Tiki Mini mounted as well. So I can show you that shot in a bit as well. Look at that. Boom, rain come in. Smooth transitions from day into night. This is specifically made for outdoor construction sites. The Tiki Mini is more for any other shooting condition, but mostly indoor shooting. Because of the stitching, you can't have something in front of the next, like 5 meters in front. But we'll talk more about that in the further bit of the session. So you can see that stitched in the middle, that you can see the moon rise here on the left, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to fast forward it. Really nice sunrise. And it's just really fun to have this panoramic camera. As you can see, it captures more than 180 degrees because the railing, the balcony that I'm on, is in the shot here on the left and on the right. That's the shot on the Tiki 3 Pro Plus. This is the shot on the Tiki Mini. So that's the tiny one versus the big one. Same sequence, slightly longer. I adjusted the settings. I messed up the memory. No, the battery wasn't fully charged on the Tiki Mini, and I had a too small a memory card in the Tiki 3 Pro Plus. So if I'd swapped that, that would have been great. But the performance of this thing is for a plug and play setup camera with a battery like that, you can just set it away for months on end. Very, very impressive. But we were talking about the ecosystem, right? So what is that ecosystem? Firstly, you have the cameras. I'll just show you the 2 current cameras. Then you have the cloud platform, which I'll demo in a second, which is where you upload either from the cameras themselves through the SIM card or the Wi-Fi chip, or you upload them from your computer, which I did this morning, to the cloud platform. And then depending on which subscription you have, you can generate a bunch of stuff. And then you also have the Tiki smartphone app with which you set up the cameras and you load in the settings and all that. So this is what that looks like. The camera, the cloud platform, and the remote app. Quick go over these specs of the camera. 100% solar powered. So this camera I have used to record a 1-year-long time lapse from my balcony that I think I have. No, I don't have here. But I made a selection of images, and you can see here on the right, these trees come in full bloom or whatever you call it. I took a sequence of like 200,000 images or something over a year, a photo every 6 minutes on this camera, and I didn't plug it in once. It was all charged via the solar panel. If you need more juice, you can get an external solar panel. This one, that is 4 times the size. And that plugs in not only to this camera, but also to, that also plugs into the small camera. So you can have, even with the small one, a fully autonomous system, which is just very exciting. It is really plug and play. It has different shooting modes. This was event mode. So there's burst, event, and long. Long is for like the seasonal stuff, months-long stuff. Event is for a couple of days, and burst is for shorter. This was event, and look at that. This is the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium splitting up. You can see the field split in 3 and roll out, and this gets turned, of course, into a NFL pitch. USA. Bit bright there with the lights on that. But yeah, flawless performance once again. Didn't have to do any editing here. There's a bit of fluff. That's probably why my allergies are so bad. Very, very cool camera system to shoot a multitude of things. So that's the Tiki 3 Pro Plus, 6K images. These are all the other settings. It is a very, very fun and unique camera to shoot on. But because of the cloud platform, it makes it so much more unique as well. And this is the new one, the Tiki Mini. Indoor use specifically because you have a shorter minimal focus distance. You can video live stream from the other one as well. versatile power sources, so you can plug it into batteries, you can plug it into the wall, you can plug it into the solar charger, all that stuff. These are the other things. So 4K resolution, it's very compact, it's cheaper as well. So 800 euros, excluding VAT, depending on where you are and where you're buying it. And this is how they can be complementary products. So you see on the screen, I'm just gonna have to use my mouse, I don't know. The 220-degree capture from the panoramic camera is good for certain bits. And also this camera has to be mounted straight. So if you're shooting a building, it has to be about halfway up to that building and shooting straight. You can't aim it down. The Mini, you can aim it down because it has a single lens. If you go down like this, it won't be able to stitch both the camera angles. What you can do is choose to just select one of the cameras, and you can use this as a single camera setup, but that's just a little bit overkill. Why wouldn't you use a single camera instead? So complementary products entirely. Different pricing for both. Obviously, one is way more complex than the other one, but they're both very, very simple to use, and in my opinion, in my experience, extremely reliable. The remote, as I mentioned, this is what it looks like. It shows you, you scan via Bluetooth, you connect to a camera, and it tells you the battery charge, the memory storage, network connectivity. You can do a preview shot with it to make sure that your shot's nicely lined up. Then you select a time-lapse sequence and you send it to the camera and you hit start, and then it'll shoot from, say, Monday to Friday from 7 a.m. until 4 p.m. or all day long, depends on how you set it up. It's a child could, enable a sequence like that. So it's very, very simple. And then online, and this is, I don't have time to demo it all now, but the cloud platform is where you edit all that stuff if you're remotely shooting. You can check in with a video live stream of each camera. It automatically generates videos. It creates time slices for you. It does a bunch of stuff. For example, it levels out exposures. You can see how this has like ghosted images. That's because it was a very flickery scene. You can add time codes on it. It is an incredibly powerful online tool to securely store and securely share your shots as well, if it's of a build site that you can send to a client. What else is here? This is another shot on the Mini from home. So this was on one battery charge and I still had a lot of battery left. You see how many days I'm shooting, like, yeah, pretty remarkable system. What else is in here? These are longer shots. Oh, no. Oh yeah, this is that year-long, or part of the year-long time-lapse shot on the Tiki 3 Pro Plus. You can see how low the sun is in the sky. This is obviously winter. And yeah, if you want to see what it looks like, I have a YouTube video, 1 year long time lapse shot on actually on this actual camera. So this was on my balcony for a year. This one, sorry, it doesn't show up if I put it here. I have to speed through because we only have six minutes left. If you have an IP camera, so a non-Tiki branded camera, you can also link that to the platform. So you can create content based on AI stuff. It can recognize, if you're shooting a build site, it can recognize, this depends on which subscription you have. It recognizes how many people are wearing helmets, how many people have a high-vis vest on, where are hotspots in the build site, where are people mostly active, where, it gives you a safety rating of the build site. It is very impressive. If you want to learn more about how the system works, join me on the other session that is specifically about the Enlaps system. And now it's question time, and I'm going to leave this screen on. So you have these discount coupons. So can I increase that size? No, that's going to be that. So yeah, Matchos dash Enlaps, 50 euros off on anything on the Enlaps store. And for my course, the Ultimate Time-Lapse course, Let's Go 50 gives you $50 reduce off. And that's it. Time for water. Write your questions in the chat if you have any. If you don't have any questions, that's fine as well. Five minutes left. Let me reread that last question. Quick one on camera movement. Do you do any while filming or all in post? Everything in post for these cameras. I have a slider system from SERP that is sadly no more. I think SERP's gone under. Well, no, they haven't gone under. They've been bought out, and then that company's shuttering the SERP operation. But I have a motion control system. I cover how to do that in my course as well. And I love it because it adds a level of production quality to your shots. So I have a 3-axis motion system. It has a pan head, it tilts as well, and then it can slide on a slider. So you can create really cool, I can't demo it now, really cool camera motions with your mirrorless or DSLR camera. This thing that I spoke about, this has a built-in mode as well. You just set it up, you go from point A to point B, and then it slowly tracks. This is 2-axis motion though, so panning and tilting, but no sliding because there's no slider to set it on. But for these cameras and for the majority of my shots, I set them up statically, and I often add motion in post-production via keyframing. Do you used to change the camera spot from a long-term time lapse on big construction site? What would be your approach? My approach would be asking the client or figuring out what is the most important bit on the construction site, what needs to be captured. Got to keep in mind that for construction sites, the focus is rarely on the storytelling or the narrative or the quality of, I mean, the quality is important of the shot. It's mostly about they can have a clear view on the majority of the action of the build site. Always keep in mind when shooting time lapses or creating any sort of visual or audiovisual content, the end client or the most important person that's watching it, is it the head of the construction company, is it the marketing company? If it's for marketing, they need it to be spicy and exciting. But is it for people that are needing to make sure that everything's gone according to regulations and rules and safety, then maybe what you need is one static shot that's really boring but is high resolution and that shows everything from beginning to end on that build site. If it was up to me and I'm shooting a long-term construction, I definitely would want multiple camera angles, and I would consider, instead of changing position from one camera, I would choose to shoot with a second camera so that I have one shot that shows beginning to end, the whole build finished, and then you have a second camera to shoot B-roll shots with, because there's just something magical about seeing a building get built from one standpoint, from A to finish, from A to Z, from start to finish, on the one shot. So if you have the budget for it, you can have 2 cameras to cut between shots. But yeah, mostly think about what's the most important output there for the client. How do you shoot hyperlapses with a gimbal? That's definitely chat for another workshop, but pretty much you mount the gimbal either on a monopod or a tripod or on a vest, or you can hand hold it and you shoot a photo and then you take a step and then you line it up and you shoot another photo and repeat that. So maybe we can do one of these as a hyperlapse workshop as well. That is one method to do it. What you could also do is make sure that your camera is click, 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 constantly recording and then slowly walking with the gimbal and then smoothly moving with it. So make sure that it moves slowly so you can smoothly go around curves, etc. Then you have a lot of motion blur on the sides. The way I shoot it mostly, I have motion blur from elements in the shot that are moving. I just realized we have 1 minute left and then this class ends. So yeah, hyperlapse is definitely a different workshop. If I get cut off in a bit, I want to thank you so much for joining in. Thank you for trialing this workshop with me for the first time. 12 participants until the end here. That's very nice to see. This will be uploaded on my channel, I think, as well, so I can rewatch it and learn. And I might share this. I'll probably share this on my newsletter. If you don't have my newsletter yet, you can find that on any of my profiles. I am Matt Joes, as I mentioned, on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and wherever else. But yeah, thank you so much for joining. It was really nice to see so many names from all over the place. We had India, London, Belgium, Miami, Charleroi, Bonjour Charleroi, Geneva, Poland, like very, very special. So thank you so much for tuning in on this one. And I'll be doing this, well, I'm doing this twice a month. So hopefully I will be switching it all up. All right, 15 seconds. I'm going to see what happens if this automatically ends or not. But yeah, arrivederci, au revoir, adieu. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you maybe on the next one. Bye-bye. So it doesn't automatically finish. So I'm going to end it here. I'm just going to stop the recording. Okay, bye.